We don't have a lot to play with. The likes of Eldon's galaxid only occupies 5.3 hectares. That's all it occupies, and all its habitat is 5.3 hectares. Dusky galaxid 7.6.
That's industry and habitat extent.
Yeah. And the Teviot galaxid is 0.5 of a hectare. So if you start talking about those numbers, even fish that we think were relatively abundant, like the Torrey fathead, still only occupies under 100 hectares. We haven't got a lot to play with, and we can't afford to lose too many more. I've roughly worked it out, we've lost 25% of our non-migratory populations in the last 10 years. Maybe a little bit more, maybe the last 12 years. So we can't afford to lose another 25% in the next 10 years. So the fats, they're about 25 hectares, and that includes extinctions, okay? So that's the top end. So if you take away our extinction, like in the Cadrona, most of the populations are nearly gone. That's out of a whole catchment. There's only a little bit, no recruitment. So these things are really, really in trouble. And if we don't do something about it, they're gone. And I suppose that's the emphasis. But really the number one problem or threat is trout. We know how to stop them from getting up, and we know how to remove them. So now it's just actually about to prioritise which species we actually concentrate on and which populations we concentrate on to actually start getting back a little bit of habitat, really. And it's just electric fishing them out and putting a concrete weir in the way to stop trout from accessing back into this creek. There's room for actually everybody out there. Like there's room for the farmers. There's room for fishing game and trout and sports fishery, but there's also room for the galaxias as long as we work together. Now the trout that we're removing are generally under 150 millimetres in size, so we're only looking at little fish like this, and they're not going to get any bigger. So they're sexually mature at that age, and unless they're a nursery fish, which sometimes some creeks are, we'll work with fishing game. But most of these fish are no use to anybody. They're no value, and we pick them up and we'll take them to a place that the fishing game wish to, for us to place them. So there's no net loss to an angler. So they don't need to worry about what we're trying to achieve here. Yeah. And if an angler's watching this, don't shift trout. And if a landowner's creating irrigation ponds, which is becoming more and more common, don't put trout in them. Because what's actually happening, they're doing a lot of water harvesting, and they create these ponds. The ponds are higher in the catchment, so they use the gravity to feed the irrigation scheme. So these ponds are high up. They put trout on it because it's a nice thing to do. They take the boy along for trout fishing. But of course, what that does is actually put the trout higher up in the catchment. Now we'd like to see that sort of activity stop. Yeah.
And why do you think, in general, why they should be protected at all?
Oh shit, that's a hard one. I think to some degree, if we allow these fish to disappear, what else are we going to? What's next? They all add to the biodiversity strategy, biodiversity side of things, and there is actually a law that says there'll be no human extinctions in New Zealand. So there's that side of things. But I think it would be a poorer place if we don't protect these. Then I think New Zealand is a poorer place. It's who we are. It's what we are. We sell a clean green image overseas, and these animals sort of represent that clean green image.
Because they're not an animal that's on a remote island somewhere. They're in people's backyards.
Yeah, they are. And I think if we are starting to lose them for reasons outside of trout, I'm talking water quality and quantity, then people of Otago need to look pretty hard at themselves, and that's why regional council is starting to come on board, and that's why it's really positive to see that. And landowners, they start talking about their fish, because it is their fish, and it's not docks. They're not the Department of Conservation's fish, they're New Zealand's fish. And if they're on your land, then they're your responsibility, they're not docks. Do you know the lesson?